first I want to get your sense of what is happening with the economy. Shopify hasn't necessarily been spared here, but what's your feeling about just how bad this will get and if a recession is inevitable?
Thanks for having me, Emily. Always a great pleasure to be on your show. Two things. Let's first talk about the retail outlook and I think consumer sentiment. What we are seeing is that there's certainly some retail rebounds happening in areas like in-person retail, and we are well positioned there. I mentioned on the earnings call last quarter that we saw physical retail GMV up by nearly 80% year on year. And then when we add things like, one of the announcements today was local inventory sync on Google and tap to pay, we really are well positioned to ensure that if physical retail is rebalancing and reopens, that Shopify merchants can also use that as well. But one of the things we're seeing from a sort of a macro perspective is that consumers are very much still voting with their dollars to support independent brands. This is something we saw happen very quickly and intensely during the pandemic. They are looking for quality products, and certainly a lot of the Shopify merchants are doing well there. In terms of the economy in general, it's clear that obviously inflation is at a record level, but to the degree in which merchants' wallets are stretched from higher prices, what they're beginning to do is they're looking to get more value out of every single dollar. And what we're seeing is that more merchants are coming onto Shopify and they're taking more of our products, whether it's capital or payments or fulfillment. They're leveraging our massive economies of scale while still keeping an independent business. So we think both those things lead to a lot of optimism on our side. And of course, Shopify Editions was launched today.
Right. You are making this big shift from D2C to C2C, as you call it, direct to consumer to connect to consumer. What does that mean, and why do you think that's the future?
So this idea of Shopify Editions, which we announced this morning about 9:30 a.m., it introduces what we're calling the connect to consumer era of commerce. And part of it is that the speed of innovation and the depth and breadth of what Shopify is building. I celebrated my 12th year anniversary last week at Shopify. So I've been around for about a third of my life. Thank you. The amount of products that we are shipping right now is stronger than ever before. We unveiled more than 100 new product updates and launches today. And I think we are moving faster than ever. And Shopify Editions is our way of sharing that momentum with the world. Now, I think, I've been on the show a lot talking about direct to consumer, which really was about this one-to-one connection with the brand to the consumer, but it was very transactional. What we are noticing is that more and more consumers want to connect with these brands online, on social media. They want to attend an event or their store. They want to have more of an emotional connection whereby they can connect with brands across a whole bunch of different surface areas. And so commerce is really just not about the transaction. It's much deeper. And we think C2C really places more authenticity and loyalty and trust at the heart of every single merchant interaction. And so a lot of the products you saw today is really about us ushering in this new model for commerce.
You're also striking a big partnership with Twitter to help businesses reach buyers there. And I just wonder why now, when Twitter is facing all of this uncertainty about whether Elon Musk buys the company or not, and if this partnership will hold up in a new regime.
We think the future of retail is going to be retail everywhere. It's going to be online and offline on social media. It's going to be in person at farmers markets, at events and concerts. We really are, I think we started as being an e-commerce company, and about 10% of all e-commerce in the US now flows through Shopify. If we were one single aggregated store, we would be the second largest online store in America. But the key here is that commerce in the future will happen everywhere. And so we've announced, I've come on the show and talked about our integrations with Google and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok to embed commerce there. And then the newest one that we're embedding, the newest partner we're embedding commerce with is Twitter. Now, Twitter is an interesting one. Of course, they're in the news a lot lately. But if you think about where commerce used to happen, it was always sort of around the town square. It's where the baker sold bread and the cobbler sold shoes. Twitter, in some ways, is the modern day digital town square. And so embedding commerce right into Twitter so you can turn conversation into commerce, all powered by Shopify, we think is a really great thing. And whether or not, they have a new owner in the future or not, I think commerce will play a role in Twitter's future.
Okay. I recently interviewed Amazon CEO Andy Jassy, Harley, and I'm not sure if you caught this, but when I asked about Amazon's relationship with third-party sellers and the tension that has existed there between Amazon and some third-party sellers, he took kind of a dig at Shopify. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Sellers don't really long for e-commerce software. That exists in lots of places. And it's not very expensive. What they love about selling on Amazon is that they get access to our hundreds of millions of customers. And that completely changes what their prospects can be in terms of the businesses they're building.
What's your response to that?
I think that it is quite clear that the future of retail is going to have direct connection between brands and the consumers. Look, I mean, obviously, a place like Amazon allows third-party sellers to access a very large network of consumers. But if you look at any of these marketplaces, you as a merchant, you are not building your own business. You are effectively renting customers from the marketplace. And I think for some merchants, that matters. But for a lot of merchants, if you think about your favorite brands or mine, James Purse or the Allbirds shoes I'm wearing or Bombas socks I'm wearing, they want to have a direct relationship with the people that are buying their products. And I think that more and more you see consumers, again, choosing to go direct whenever possible. So I think there's a place for marketplaces, and obviously Amazon has done a great thing there and is very valuable in that way. But I think consumers also want to have a direct relationship with the brands they're buying from, and that's the reason why you see companies like Mattel and Crayola and Herman Miller and Procter and Gamble use Shopify to go direct to consumer. These are brands that traditionally never did so, and now they're doing that.
Now, Harley, Shopify shares have taken a pretty big dive since November, where they hit a high point, and obviously we're in the middle of broader market turmoil. But how concerned are you about this and going forward? How are you thinking about this? What are investors missing?
I think Shopify was certainly a pandemic story, and I think obviously the stock reflected that. But I think what a lot of people are missing about the Shopify story is that on one hand, we're 10% of all e-commerce in the US. We have massive scale at the same time, and those economies of scale that come with it. At the same time, the 2 million stores on Shopify have an independent business. At the same time that happens, every 30 seconds or so, a brand new entrepreneur gets their first sale on Shopify. That means we are not only getting a larger piece of the pie, we're growing the pie itself. And all those stores that end up, businesses that end up being really successful will stay on Shopify indefinitely. And that's why you see companies like Figs and Allbirds go public, and Gymshark and all these amazing brands that were built at their mom's kitchen table that are now category leaders built on Shopify.
I also want to ask about...
Sure.
I also want to ask about your... Go ahead. Finish your point.
I was going to say, in terms of... So I think we were a pandemic story. I think what often people miss is we're also this reopening story. Again, 80% of our we had 80% growth in point of sale GMV. We have thousands of stores all over the world that use Shopify to power their physical store. We saw social embedded commerce on surfaces like Instagram and TikTok and now Twitter grow almost 400% year on year last quarter. So Shopify is really more than just an e-commerce provider or a pandemic story. We really are the world's retail operating system. And again, look at every one of your favorite brands, or anyone listening, look at your favorite brands. You will start seeing Shop Pay as the payment gateway. You will start seeing Shopify power those brands. That's really important to us, and that's the reason why I think our future is very bright.
I also want to ask about your evolving governance story. Shopify recently made some changes to enhance Toby Lutka, the CEO's power. Some shareholders did oppose these changes. What are you hearing from shareholders now, in terms of concerns about this change, and what has been Shopify's response?
I've spent the last few weeks with some of our largest investors and frankly, a lot of investors generally. And I think we're grateful for their trust and continue to run the business. But the goal here really was modernizing our governance structure. We want to be a 100-year company. We're about 16 years into it. So we got a lot more time, 84 years left to go. And we want to ensure that we can run our business and make really good long-term decisions for investors, for merchants, for every stakeholder that's involved with Shopify. And we think this modernization, particularly around the governance structure, allows us to do that. I'll also tell you, having spent so much time with investors lately, that some of these investors that have been with us for the last 7 years, since the IPO in May 2015, they believe more in Shopify now than ever before, and we're grateful for that. But we got a lot of room to grow, and we have a lot of new opportunities in front of us.